Coming to you from 4,200 feet in the hills of Oregon, it is the voice of Chytown, the reddest beard in the high desert. Your host of the MOA broadcast, Sam Wilson. All right, folks, we got a fantastic show lined up for you today. All kinds of good stuff. Well, most of it good anyway, maybe not all of it, but that just is part of life. You got to take the good with the bad. A couple of show highlights. We've got crocodile attacks again, lunchtime beatdowns, a fast food shootout. We get back into Dead Reckoning navigation. So, you know, the heart and the soul of this show, to me, is I'm an outdoorsman, in my opinion. Real outdoorsman may not call me that. I like to think of myself as an outdoorsman. I spend a good portion of each year hiking and fishing, occasionally hunting, and just spending time in the outdoors. I live in a pretty remote area. The nearest town of substance or of size is about 35 miles away or 35 minutes away at about 65 miles an hour. So, I mean, we're kind of remote. It takes 35, 40 minutes to get into town, depending on how you do it. And I live in a small town. It's like 700 or 800 people, though. And, you know, I can see the mountains from my front porch. So it gets remote very, very quickly. So anyway, Dead Reckoning navigation, we'll get into it later, but it was mentioned in a couple of episodes ago by me. It's a really handy technique, very, very low tech, but sometimes those are the skills that serve you the best. So all it really requires is a compass and maybe a pencil and paper, or you can do it in your head if you stay with it. So anyway, we'll get to that later. Synthetic salmon. I'm not criticizing these companies or their products per se. To me personally, this stuff sounds disgusting. We've talked about these lab-cultured meats before. They now have synthetic salmon, and it is coming to a restaurant near you. And finally, more machete attacks. So I tell you, it is a wild, wild country. Speaking of wild country, we're not really going to cover this in the episode today. If you've been watching the news, I mean, even if you haven't been, holy smokes, how can you, especially if you're in the States here in the U.S., these riots and the, you know, whatever they're calling them, no king this and anti-ICE or immigration this and that. There are people just in some of the major cities across this country that have just gone buck wild. If you watch, I've mentioned before using X. It used to be called Twitter. So for those of you maybe that are a little more low tech, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I'm a low tech person myself. I just happen to have a smartphone and I use it and do a lot of research on it. I've had several questions asking what X is. X has nothing to do with anything inappropriate or pornographic. It's called X. It used to be called Twitter. It's an online news service, or, you know, I don't really know how you would describe it. It's a content social media. You can pretty much put anything you want up there, but a lot of people use it for news and to post updates and just events that are happening. So the reason it's called X is the owner, Elon Musk, he has a high affinity for the letter X, apparently. I think even one of his kids is named X or something to that effect. It's in his name. A number of his companies have X in them and so forth. So that's all it really boils down to. But it's more than anything, I use it as a news service. You can go on there. And the reason I bring this up is if you look up like even these current riots and the unpolitical unrest and so forth, whatever you want to call it, on X, you see a very, very different depiction of it than what you see on maybe the mainstream media, what they call the legacy media now, which is like your mainstream news channels, NBC, CNN, CBS, and so forth. You're seeing it. They no longer just give the news, and this has been going on for a long time. Many people are aware of this, but they no longer just give the news. They editorialize heavily on almost everything they talk about. X, you know, I don't really, there are people that editorialize in the other direction as well. I like to see pictures and video of what's going on because then I can make my own determination on how I feel about this, how I think about it, and what I believe and so forth. And that's what we try to do here with the MOA broadcast, the Make It Out Alive broadcast. We try and give you raw data. Obviously, sometimes I inject my opinion into it. When I do that, I usually say, you know, this is my opinion. This is how I feel. but I like to show people the respect of letting them make up their own mind. That's what an adult should be able to do. Do the research. We talked about this a lot with the COVID, the vaccines or the shots or whatever you want to call them, the masks and so forth. Take the data, look it up, and then you make your own determination. I don't want you to do anything because I said it or because some other talking head on X or Twitter or CNN or whatever said to do it. As an adult, do your research and make your own determination. So that's the other reason why we're not going to get too heavy into the riots and so forth. They're really big in LA, Chicago, New York, a couple other places. Florida and Texas seem to really have a handle on it, but it's become so political. It's very difficult to wade into it without people getting very political feelings deep down one side or the other, and that's not what we're here for. I'm so tired of every single, and no disrespect to anybody that does it, but every single show and podcast and everything talking about politics nonsense. I'm tired of it. I can't take it anymore. So we're not going to get political. I'm not going to tell you what to do. And that's why we're not going to get too deep into the riots. Every news organization and every person with a smartphone in the U.S. and around the world practically is covering these events nonstop. There's plenty of news out there to find out if you want to look it up. We try and, get into outdoor topics, particularly situational awareness and other things, and inject a few interesting news events that you may find, of interest occasionally. Not just do the same thing that everybody else is doing. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So there was also, look this up. This is this is going to be a big story moving forward. There were two politicians and their spouses or partners or whatever in Minnesota that were shot by a guy dressed as a cop. He showed up at their door, allegedly, and when they answered it, he even had like a security vehicle with flashing lights to look like a police officer, apparently, according to some reports I read. And when they opened the door, he executed this politician and her husband and some other, I think, politician and his wife or part. I haven't got all the details yet. It's been kind of developing. But, man, that's going to be a serious story because, like everything now in America, it has become extremely politically divided, and it's just a matter of this side wants to throw everything on that side and so forth. So I don't really want to get into that. We're going to keep moving forward. I don't want to get into another landmine here, a big mud puddle, but does anybody watch the show Yellowstone? I have never seen an episode of Yellowstone, so I'm not going to sit here and hold it in judgment, but I have seen a bunch of clips. For some reason, they've been popping up on my timeline on TikTok. TikTok is a social media platform, if you're not aware of that. And this show, Yellowstone, I think it's already ended. So it's been going on for some years. It was extremely successful. So, whatever. I'm not going to, go cast aspersion on their success. They made a lot of money. And I'm sure the people running it and writing it and so forth, they cashed out and made their money. The thing that I found bizarre is I don't really know what the premise is. It appears that it's this family's journey to protect this big cattle ranch or something or other to that effect. It's based in Montana. And I'm not trying to, feign ignorance here. I haven't seen a single episode, but I've just seen a bunch of clips. So I have a kind of a disjointed view of the show. But there's this character on there. And my point of this is the bizarre, ridiculous aspect or take on masculinity they have on the show. These people in the show, in my opinion, are homicidal maniacs. There's this guy that walks around. He's like I guess he's the foreman of the ranch or something. He's walking around in $700 worth of like Carhartt stuff. He's a walking Carhartt commercial, with the jacket and the pants and the shirt and the boots and the sunglasses and so forth. And all he does is go around and fight people. I don't know. And so I could be, prematurely judging the show, but these people seem like they're homicidal maniacs. I've seen like 3 or 4 different clips right now where he walks up to a couple of cowboys that are getting ready to mix it up or get into a physical fight. And he goes, what's the one rule on this ranch? There's no fighting. You want to fight me? I'll fight you all gosh darn day. And I don't know who in their right mind thinks that's what the picture of masculinity is about, but clearly somebody does because that's the way the character was wrote. And I'm not criticizing the actor because he's doing his job. I've always found this interesting when people criticize an actor or actress or whatever for taking a role. That's not them. I mean, it may be in real life in some cases, but they're doing a job. They were given lines and setup and so forth. They're playing their role in a movie. But this character who's like the foreman of this ranch, he walks around in all black most of the time, and he just beats the tar out of anybody that gets in his way. And he has this line where he goes, "I'll fight you all gosh darn day." He uses the more adult version of that profanity, that expletive. But it's just bizarre. If you've ever been around real masculine, secure in themselves men, no sane man who's a real man that I've ever been around acts like that. So it was just bizarre to me the way this guy is this character is portrayed as like this alpha dog of masculinity, and he just goes around beating the tar out of people. And if people go too far, they do what's called taking them to the train station, which is nothing more than driving them out to the woods, and they blow their brains out and take all their crap and stuff and dump them in a ditch. This show is crazy. I don't even really know what it's about. So again, I won't criticize unnecessarily, but these scenes, like half the people on the show, or a quarter of them, are serial killers or homicidal maniacs. They just go blow people's brains out and kick them down a ditch in Montana somewhere and think that's the end of it. Based on the handful of clips that I've seen on TikTok, there must be dozens of people through the course of this show that are just, they don't even bury them. They just dump them out of a truck and along with their luggage, and they roll down some hill into a ditch somewhere. And it's like, have you heard of DNA evidence or ballistics or whatever? Anyway, whatever, it's a show. I get it. I'm not trying to pick on it. In reality, I looked up the guy's name who plays, I forget his character name. It was something bizarre or interesting, I should say. But he plays the Carhartt commercial character guy. And he's played by a guy named Cole Hauser. I looked it up. His dad, I didn't realize this, is actually Wings Hauser. Now, if that doesn't ring a bell for you, I'm a huge fan of TV shows and movies from the 80s. Hunter is one of my absolute favorite programs, featuring or starring Fred Dryer and Stephanie Kramer. Okay, Wings Hauser was the primary baddie. He was the bad guy in one of my absolute top 3, if not my number 1 episode of Hunter. He plays he looks a lot more menacing than his son, especially without a beard. His son without a beard is a bit of a smoothie, in my opinion, but that's another story for another time. Again, no disrespect to him. I'm giving my opinion here. It's worth what you paid for it, which is absolutely zero. But his dad, Wings Hauser, plays this, what was he? He was a bounty hunter. And he was hell on wheels in this episode. He was awesome. He was one of the very, very few characters who was absolutely not afraid of Rick Hunter, Sergeant Rick Hunter. He was the star of the show and was not afraid to get in there and mix it up. Even if he lost, he went in there and got down with Hunter. He was a great bad guy on that episode. Really, really fun. So anyway, much respect. Huge fan of him. He was in that and several other things from the 80s. But I liked him as that. I can't remember his name. I should have looked it up before this show, but he played this bounty hunter in that episode. And I'll always remember because the opening scene is with this guy waiting it out in a hotel room and he's watching Looney Tunes. And even from a young age, I remember seeing that episode and that stuck with me. When I see that opening over the bad guy in the hotel room watching Looney Tunes, holding a shotgun or a Bowie knife or whatever it was, like it's been a while, I know exactly what's about to happen. But it was a great episode. So anyway, this Yellowstone show, I don't think I'll have the guts to watch it. There's also some blonde female. I don't know what in the world role she is supposed to play, but her character it looks like a raging alcoholic who just blows up multi-billion-dollar business deals constantly. In the real world, somebody like that would have just been whacked. With the frequency they kill people on that show, the reality is somebody like her would have been whacked. She seems like she's absolutely insane. So anyway, that's my take on having seen 10 or 15 TikTok clips. I'm sure I'm probably dead wrong. My apologies in advance if I am. But that show seems bizarre. I hope, I know it did very, very well, so they don't need me. It is what it is. That's my opinion. Okay. One other thing before we get into our next story. If you've been following, we do a true crime episode along with our weekly MOA broadcast. And we may or may not be switching to a every other week or bi-weekly, however you want to look at that, true crime episode. I just haven't had the time to put these together, and I don't want the quality to suffer. So if you've been enjoying our true crime episodes as well, they're still going to be coming out. We've got at least 3 more episodes in the Irish Mafia series that is coming up, and I've got one that's going to be released this coming week on Thursday or Friday at the latest. So it will be coming up this week. After that, I'm not sure if we're going to do it every single week. It may be, whatever, but that's what's going on with that. Don't forget, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, send us an email at info@gearconvoy.com. That's info@gearconvoy.com. We send out a free mini survival kit to the best email or feedback or suggestion every single week. Let me have a sip and we will get down to it. Okay, we go to the Philippines. This story is absolutely insane. I'll read you the headline and then we'll jump right in. Tourist attacked by crocodile after mistaking it for statue. This story comes to us from the New Zealand Herald. This sounds like something out of a Pink Panther movie or something. That a hapless tourist. I'm sorry. Okay. A hapless tourist climbed into a crocodile's enclosure to pose for selfies after taking the predator for a statue and was promptly chomped. That is the New Zealand Herald. That's not my words. The male visitor, 29 years of age, found the pointy end of the 4.5-meter reptile. That's about, 14, 15 feet, assuming they measured accurately. I'll tell you a little secret. People very, very frequently measure reptiles, especially inaccurately, especially like snakes and so forth. A lot of times you'll see dramatically inflated measurements for the length of like snakes and so forth after they've, split it open and skinned it and dried it and so forth, laid it out. Anyway, that's another story, but people love to exaggerate. Either way, this says 4.5 meters. I think that's about roughly 14, 15 feet. At the zoo in Zamboanga, Sibugay, I don't know, I'm probably Sibugay. I'm probably saying that wrong, in the south of the Philippines. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. The man climbed over a chain link fence and waded through the water before grinning as he produced his smartphone. Horrified onlookers screamed at the man to leave as the angry female croc named Lale surged toward him and sunk her fangs deep into his arm. I'm sorry. This story is so crazy. He's at a zoo. Why would you think that there's a statue of a crocodile in a zoo? Gruesome footage shows the tourist wailing in pain as the predator clamps her jaws around his arm, refusing to let him leave the enclosure. I saw the pictures in the video. It is horrible. He's screaming. She then latched onto his thigh and flipped over several times, trying to maim him in, as Crocodile Dundee would tell us, a brutal death roll. A savage method used by crocs to tear their prey apart. He was reportedly trapped in the pen in agony for up to 30 minutes. 30 minutes before Lale's caretaker, risked his own life to climb inside and rescue him. The reptile handler was said to have slammed a piece of cement onto Lale's head, prompting her to loosen her grip. Medics wrapped the visitor's wounded arm and thigh with cloth to stanch the bleeding. Excellent use of the word stanch, I might add, to stanch the bleeding before rushing him to a hospital for treatment. For some reason, the police say there were several zookeepers available, but they failed to stop the tourist from breaching the fence. Maybe they were big fans of natural selection. I don't know. Locals who recorded, they were sitting here taping this guy as he was doing this. I'm sorry, this story cracks me up. He waded through the shallow pool to pose alongside the reptile for pictures, and he thought it was a life-size model because it was so still. Onlooker Kanete G, and I apologize for the pronunciation, said, "I don't know why he would do such a stupid thing, but I'm glad the man is alive and the crocodile just let him go. His leg wasn't broken, but he suffered arm and thigh wounds. The zoo has no comment on the incident." Man, oh my goodness. So here in the MOA broadcast, the the perspective we would take on this as we try and examine what could have been done better to prevent the situation from escalating the way it did. Don't climb into crocodile enclosures at zoos to take selfies. Do you guys realize, for those of us who are listening who are over 35, who are over 40, over 45, over 50, selfies weren't a thing. They didn't used to be a thing, not the way they are now. The thing and this guy was, what was he, 20, where'd it go? He was 29. For these younger generations, these cell phones have made selfies and social media and stuff a very ubiquitous thing. And people, how many times have we covered just on this show alone? And that's only been going for what, 22, 24 episodes? People that have died taking selfies. And if you look in the news, there are hundreds every year of instances of people taking selfies and climbing over enclosures and fences and barricades at national parks and so forth, dying to get a selfie. It's a bizarre, bizarre thing. So anyway, it is what it is. Life goes on. Fortunately, the young man made it, and we are happy for that. So now, we go to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Attack on a postal worker in Pittsburgh leads to SWAT standoff. CBS News is our source for this article. An attack on a U.S. Postal Service worker sparked a police standoff in Pittsburgh's Bon Air neighborhood on Wednesday. Law enforcement said it responded to the Bon Air neighborhood after Jason Olszewski assaulted a postal worker nearby and refused to come out of his home on Tarragona Street. Court documents say Olszewski told police he was putting on body armor. What happened? Well, apparently, so the neighbor's name is Priore, I'm guessing. He says they sent police negotiators to negotiate this guy out of his house. They were there probably an hour, about 45 minutes, and they talked him out. He tried to escape, and then they tackled him. But it started when this poor postal worker was just sitting inside his postal truck eating his lunch. And I don't know what happened, allegedly, with this Olszewski guy, but he approached the truck and started punching and kicking his side door. Then he threw the rock at the vehicle. Now imagine you're this poor postal worker. Let's just put yourself in the situation for a moment. You're sitting here and you're like, I hate working for the post office. Maybe, I don't know what he was thinking. I'm spitballing here. I'm eating my stupid ham and cheese sandwich and my bag of Fritos and my can of Fresca or whatever it is in my life that's making me, whatever. And some guy walks up and starts punching and kicking, the side door of you've seen the little miniature postal truck. I'm assuming that's what he was in. It doesn't say, it just says inside his vehicle. And then when he threw a rock at the vehicle, that's when the worker apparently got outside and confronted him. Olszewski is accused of punching him in his arm and shoulder. So the takeaway from this, we'll close the story up here. It ended pretty uneventfully after that. Well, somewhat. There was a taser involved, so there's that much to live on. But don't get out of your vehicle. Each week I come across probably dozens of road rage incidents in preparation for this episode, the show. Don't get out of the vehicle, man. There was an episode or an event that happened, I don't know, probably 3 to 4 months ago, maybe 6 months ago. And I guess it's probably actually a little longer than that, 6 to 10 months ago. Anyways, this guy and his newlywed brides, this guy had just gotten married, okay? I forget where it was. I want to say Florida, but I'm not sure. This guy and his newlywed bride are out driving around on their honeymoon still, or just after it ended. And they got into some mild road rage incident with some other vehicle. And so the guy, the newlywed husband, gets out. He's holding his pistol, and he approaches the other vehicle. The other guy was armed also. And as soon as the newlywed husband pulls up his pistol, the guy just dumps 1 or 2 shots into him. Kills him. Now, I don't know what happened. I believe it wound up being found justified. That's not the point. The point is, guys, don't get out of your vehicle. In these road rage incidents, just let it go. Who really cares? And I'm not knocking this postal worker at all. They don't say, there's an old saying, you can't Monday morning quarterback use of force. Unless you were there, you don't know. So we don't know exactly what happened to this postal worker dude, but it probably, maybe, I don't know, my guess is on the very limited information we have available, drive off or, ignore the guy, whatever you got to do. But getting out is not going to work out well in most cases. And in some cases, you may wind up getting shot over what? A stupid road rage incident? If you ever had a road rage incident in your life, whether you were the victim or the aggressor, 2 weeks later, you don't even remember it anymore. It was just something stupid. Somebody cut you off. You cut them off. Somebody, made a gesture, whatever. Is that worth dying for? That's the make it out alive aspect of this. So after this, there was a SWAT standoff. They got him out. He surrendered after 45 minutes to an hour. It was all good. Olszewski, that was the alleged aggressor in this case, he was charged with terroristic threats and disorderly conduct. Court documents and said his grandmother called police because she was worried he was ODing on Xanax. Police and paramedics went into his bedroom, and Olszewski got aggressive, telling him he was going to go upstairs and get two 12 gauges. Then he followed the officer outside before being tased and taken into custody. The neighbor said, "I was told he was hot-headed." So there you go, folks. That is that. Now, this one is another good story about interacting with people that have obviously gotten or become aggressive. Is it really worth it? Excuse me. This time we go to Orlando. This comes to us from WSAZ News. Customer killed by Checkers worker in dispute that allegedly started over extra mayonnaise. A fast food worker in Florida is facing charges after he allegedly shot and killed a customer. Police say a verbal dispute over a food order reportedly led to the shooting. Elijah Mackey, 23 years of age, appeared before a judge for the first time Friday, where he was given no bond. According to court documents, the shooting happened on Wednesday just after 10 p.m. So for those of you outside the States, Checkers is a fast food chain. Basically, it's kind of like a McDonald's. I think Rally's is the analog to that. But it's a fast food burger joint. Okay, Whataburger, McDonald's, Checkers, Rally's, whatever. I think they do have good curly fries. I used to live in the South, and I'm pretty sure that's where they're based out of, where they operate heavily, is in the South. Checkers, they had good curly fries, I believe. Anyway, immaterial. They responded to a Checkers restaurant on West Earlo Bronson Highway. A customer was getting his food from the front window when he began arguing with a female employee and asked to speak with a manager. Court documents say that a witness said the customer wanted more mayonnaise packets with his order. The situation escalated. Surveillance video allegedly from Checkers showed Mackey climbing out of a drive-thru window and walking to the front of the restaurant to speak to the customer. Apparently, the customer then made a derogatory comment to Mackey, and that's when the 23-year-old pulled out a handgun from his waistband and shot the man in the chest, allegedly. Mackey ran from the scene, but they found him hiding in a stairwell at the Celebration Suites a short time later. The customer was taken to a hospital where he later died. Mackey is being charged with premeditated murder with a firearm. Folks, ask yourself if it's worth it. In fact, this is a good story in a way, and it obviously had a bad outcome. Just yesterday, I was in town with my dog Bacon. He goes to town when we get supplies, and we stopped and got tacos. He loves tacos and chicken nuggets, okay? Got him tacos at a Jack in the Box. For some reason, while I'm feeding my dog tacos at the parking lot of this Jack in the Box, fast food restaurant, some very large female started making comments and yelling at us. I don't know. I don't even understand what her problem was. She was just yapping and running her big old mouth, and I made some remarks. And this is the point. I shouldn't have. I usually, when that stuff happens, I just get in my vehicle and drive away. I want nothing to do with those kind of people. I don't care what their deal is. It leads to bad things. But I made some remarks about, SeaWorld and Shamu, which she didn't understand at first. But after I explained it to her, she then took great umbrage at my large orca whale comments, and things deteriorated rapidly. Anyway, ask yourself if it's worth it. Just walk away, because it's not. All right, folks, we got to take a break. When we get back, we've got all kinds of good stuff, and we will get into the Dead Reckoning navigation and a whole bunch of other things, along with fake sushi after the break. More Make It Out Alive with Sam Wilson after this.
This is Dave. Dave makes the tastiest burritos in town. But Nobody knows I exist. I'm serving culinary masterpieces to my mom and a raccoon named Dennis.
Then came Jenny.
Dave, have you tried radio?
Radio, isn't that for traffic reports and late-night alien talk?
It's also for thousands of people who don't know you exist.
Huh?
Yet, radio is affordable, reliable, and it works. Not instant burrito fame, but people start showing up kind of results.
So I partnered with Gold Country Radio, and now people know I exist. I've got new customers, catering calls, and Dennis brought a possum. I think they're dating.
I told you. Radio gets your business heard.
Next up, we a second table, maybe indoor seating.
Want to get your business heard? Visit goldcountryradio.org and click Contact to get started. Radio, small budget, big reach, real results.
You're listening to the MOA broadcast with Sam Wilson. Will you make it out alive? All right, and we are back from the break. We are back to the MOA, the Make It Out Alive broadcast with your host, Sam Wilson. Okay, folks, before the break, we were talking briefly about this incident that happened at a Checkers restaurant or fast food establishment in Orlando. The guy got into it with an employee there, and the guy wanted making some derogatory comments. The employee allegedly shot him, and he died. He did die. That's not allegedly. Whoever did it, whatever, that's up for the courts to decide. I made a comment about how I was at a taco establishment last night taking my dog Bacon. So my dog Bacon goes to town when I go to town to pick up supplies. Like I said, we're a 35 to 40 minute drive from town, depending how you measure it. And so we usually get, some tacos or burgers, or he loves tacos and chicken nuggets. Bacon he's an English pointer, beautiful dog. Everybody loves him wherever we go. They know him by name at the grocery stores. He goes in with me and so forth. So anyway, some people have bizarre reactions to things they don't like or don't understand. My whole life, I was always taught, if it's none of your business, then leave it alone. Shut up, mind your own business, and get on your way. Some people are taught, apparently, or they've learned the exact opposite. So anyway, very briefly, I don't want to make this a thing. It was just kind of, mildly funny. But some lady, she made some derogatory comments. I don't know why to this day. Some people do this. A couple of months ago, I was in a grocery store with my dog, and some lady didn't like the fact that he was sniffing her kids. He is an extremely friendly dog. He didn't touch her kids, but they were walking up to him and wanted to pet him. And so he was just sniffing the kids. And this lady literally walked over and tried to kick my dog right in front of me and all these people inside this grocery store. And she started cursing at him. And so, of course, I just pulled my dog away. We packed up our stuff and got out of there. I just typically leave. But this lady at Jack in the Box, or the fast food establishment last night or yesterday, she I guess, rubbed me the wrong way. And so I made some comment about Shamu, and she was a fairly large lady, and looks like she probably spent a lot of time. Sorry, we got some background noise. We filmed this out in the knife shop, for those of you who aren't familiar. Anyway, this lady, she was kind of large. Looks like she probably spent a lot of time at a fast food establishment. So I made some remark about Shamu and SeaWorld. And the point is, I shouldn't have done that. Not only is it impolite, you never know how people are going to react. That's what happened with this guy at the Checkers, the fast food place. He made some kind of derogatory comment, and this other guy allegedly shot him and killed him. So anyway, learn from my mistake. Don't call people massively fat or overweight. Just move on and get going and leave the Shamu and SeaWorld jokes at home. So anyway, that's what happened. But we were going to get to the dead reckoning portion of the segment here. We got an email from a listener, Greg, who is from the Southwest here in America. He didn't really say whether he was Arizona or, whatever, but just from the Southwest, asking about this segment I did on Dead Reckoning a couple of shows ago. I don't got time to read the whole email. He actually had a really good one, but we'll have to jump into it as far as the substance, not all the words. So Dead Reckoning navigation. Let me read the internet explanation of it first, and then I'll basically give you the practical application of this, because Dead Reckoning has been around for thousands of years. It is a very simple, it takes a decent amount of skill, but a low amount of practiced skill. Once you get the basics down, if you practice it, it is very easy to polish this skill up to where it is very, very useful. And it's very useful whether you're in a vehicle, whether you're on foot, whether you're in the woods. I actually found this. I've lived in several major cities here in the United States. Dead reckoning has actually been very, very handy and useful in large cities, especially if they're laid out well on a grid. So let's read the definition here, or the explanation. Let me get a sip to wet my whistle here. Okay. Dead reckoning is a navigation method where you determine your current position by using a previously known location and tracking your direction, speed, and time traveled from that point. Let me interject briefly. Dead reckoning is not really a navigation technique to get you somewhere. You could use it that way, but it's where it really shines is to get you back to your original location. Okay? So whether you're in a large parking garage, whether you're out on a trail and you decide to bushwhack off in the woods, which is, one way you get off the trail and go off on your own trail, and then you want to come back to that original point in the trail. That was how I use it the most frequently. Or you're going to be walking around several blocks and in a shopping center or in a city area, and you want to get back to your starting point where you got your car at the meter or whatever. That's what dead reckoning is. That's where it really shines. Okay, it's been used at sea in a variety of other places, but that's where it really shines for us here in the 21st century, in my opinion. It gets you back where you started from very efficiently. Okay, so instead of using, back to the description here, instead of using GPS or landmarks, you estimate where you are by calculating how far and in what direction you've moved. It's like saying I started here, walked north for 30 minutes at 3 miles per hour, so I should be about 1.5 miles north of my starting point. While useful, it can become inaccurate over time if small errors in direction or speed add up. That is true. So when I would do dead reckoning, was there another portion here? Let's see. Yeah, it goes into a detailed explanation. And again, you're going to get more out of that if you look it up online and see it visually and practice it and write it down. But to give a very brief explanation of how this works, like the thing just said there, okay, you're going to need to know a couple of things. You need to know your average walking speed over the terrain that you are covering. So the best way to do that is take your phone or a good GPS unit, if people still even have those. I've got a Garmin GPS unit that's probably going on, it's going on 25 to 30, well, it's over 25, 30, 35 years old that I still use for these purposes. You want to, but your phones, our smartphones now will do all of this. Turn on the GPS function, you can get apps for this and so forth, or smart watches, a variety of different things. And you want to get a feel for your speed over even and uneven ground. So I know for me personally, when I am really walking at a good pace, I typically go at 4 or 4.2 miles per hour over even terrain, which in this context is a sidewalk. That is my average walking speed when I want to cover some decent ground. That is not me jogging or running or really laying the steam on. That is just a good, speedy walking pace. If I'm taking my time, I'll do about 3 to 3.5 miles per hour. And that is my average, like taking my time, enjoying my perambulatory speed if I'm going for a walk. Now, if I'm in the woods, if I'm on reasonably level ground, I will average 3 to 3.2 miles per hour. If it starts getting a little bit more rough, then we drop down to 2 to 2.75 miles per hour. And if we're extremely rough, it's 1.5 to 2 miles per hour. I would have to kind of double check the extremely rough terrain. I haven't done that one in a while with my GPS, but the other ones I'm very solid on. If you take just a little bit of effort, it doesn't take like hours to do this. A couple of minutes will establish, what 3 or 3.5 or 4 miles per hour feels like on foot on even or uneven terrain. Now, once you have that down, all you really need to use dead reckoning is a watch and a compass. A paper and pen or a pen and pencil and paper, whatever, is handy, but you don't absolutely need it. And let me illustrate this even more basically so that if it's not coming through, because I'm a visual learner, someone can explain something extremely well to me and it won't click. I need to see it. But just to give this one more, level here, to use dead reckoning, let's say you were going to walk north. All right, you start at any given destination or location, on your map or in the woods, your backyard, a field, a city, wherever. If you go north and you travel north for 30 minutes at whatever your speed, let's say 3 miles an hour, okay? And then you go 3 miles an hour north and you go northeast 3 miles per hour. Then it's going to be basically, what did I do? I have to write this down because I can't do this while I'm doing it on the radio and the show. Let's see, where did I put it? Here we go. This is an easier way of breaking it down. If you walk north for 30 minutes and then turn due east and walk for 30 minutes, maintaining a constant speed, to get back to your starting point, you would go southwest for 30 minutes. I was on the right track. I just got lost in the numbers there. I got the computer going. I got the software going for the voice and everything else, and I'm talking into a camera and yada, yada, yada. So I guess I'm stupid. But that's it. If you go north for 30 minutes and then you go east for 30 minutes, look at that, up and then to the right to get it. And if you stop right there and go, okay, now I want to go back to my original starting point, you would go southwest for 30 minutes and you would wind up being right back at your starting point. So basically you made a triangle, north, straight up to the right, and then you went down and to the left, right back to your starting point. Does that make sense? Okay. Now where this comes in handy is when I would go hiking, or when I would go in this, New York is a perfect example of this. Certain parts of Manhattan are an absolute perfect grid, and Dead Reckoning worked extremely well. I would keep a little button compass on my watch chain, or my keychain, and I would be able to use that and navigate and do all kinds of navigation with nothing more than a little button compass. Because when I lived in New York, this is going back a while. This was before GPS. If you want to know how far back this goes, I actually bought a Palm Pilot. So those of us who are old timers now, I guess, I bought a Palm Pilot when Palm Pilots were still a thing. And I had the GPS attachment, which was this big, gigantic, by today's standards, the whole thing was about 1.5 times the size of a current smartphone. And you would snap on this GPS attachment and you could download the streets and the maps of certain cities and so forth and all this. Anyways, I'm getting off track, but if you remember the Apple Newton, that was like the next evolution of a Palm Pilot, different company, different product, but it was the same basic thing. They were products that in a way were just kind of too far ahead of their time. Fantastic ideas, but the technology just wasn't there. And then when the smartphone came along, it eclipsed all of it. So anyway, where I use this the most outside of like cities, when I would go for a hike, I got tired of taking the same basic trails that everybody else would take, because in a lot of these hiking trails I would go on, they were crowded. So I would go in like maybe a mile or two, or 3, so that I was deeper into the park, or the BLM and Bureau of Land Management, National Land, so forth. And then I would just strike off on my own and do what's called bushwhacking. Bushwhacking just means you're walking off the established trail and going through the bushes and the weeds and so forth. You have to drop your speed a little bit, but you're not going to encounter people because you're literally in the middle of nowhere, okay? The trails go a certain predetermined area. Most people, they're scared to death to get off trails. They have no idea what they're doing, and so they stick to the trails. I would get off, but at some point, you have to get back to the trail to know how to get back to your car or wherever you're going, the trailhead, wherever. So that's where Dead Reckoning came in handy. I would go and I would practice this. And, again, this is probably nerding out. If you don't like this kind of stuff, this may not be interesting to you, but it was a big deal to me, especially when I was younger. Before I learned these skills, I was very dedicated. I like to know things, to the maximum amount that I could. And, so I could do it almost in my sleep. I had what are called pace counting beads. I used to sell them on my website, but they're so easy to make. I showed people how to make them. And then somewhere my tutorial got deleted and whatever. But you can look up 100 different places at least on YouTube and so forth, how to make pace counting beads. That helps you to measure your distance. But after you've been doing it a while, you don't even need that. I kept a small piece of paper and a pencil around like a lanyard on my chest, around my neck. And I would just keep track of my distance. I went north, for 35 minutes, which winds up being at, 3.2 miles an hour, yada, yada distance. Then I went, northeast, and you keep track of all this. And when you're all done, you draw a little map, and then you just do a little bit of calculation, some very basic math, and you would shoot your azimuth or your line straight back to the trail. And believe it or not, I'm not trying to brag. This is 100% legit. I got it to where after a couple of months of doing this, and then doing it for years after that. But after a couple of months of doing this, you could easily shoot back to within 10 or 15 meters of your original spot of getting off the trail. Now, you do have to be careful, because if you start making cumulative errors in your distance or your time management, they add up. If you're off 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 100 meters or whatever, yards, whatever you use, meters will wind up being a lot easier because it's based on a system of tens. Yards, a mile in America. Okay. So for those of you outside the U.S., a mile is a kilometer is 1,000 meters, right? Extremely easy to work with and break down. We go by a mile in the U.S. A mile is 5,280 feet. Who on earth came up with that? I know this history behind it, but that is one of the most difficult things to remember. If you were to ask the average American, I doubt many of them would know that a mile was 5,280 feet. And I know this because I've asked dozens, if not hundreds of people over the years. I like asking people bizarre questions, not to be weird, but just I'm curious what they know. Not in relation to me to make myself better or worse, but do you know how many ounces in a gallon? Do you know how many quarts in a gallon? How many feet in a mile? How many feet in a meter? So how many pounds in a kilogram? Anyway, if you make some mild miscalculations, those can easily start adding up cumulatively. So you have to be careful. But once you get it down, it's a very handy skill to have, and you will impress, I promise you, more than one person in the backcountry if you wind up using the skill, Dead Reckoning, to get back to where you started, where you've deviated from the trail, where you got lost, so forth. Because most people, what it really boils down to is the same thing we preach constantly here on the MOA broadcast, which is situational awareness. What Dead Reckoning really boils down to is being mindful of how far you're traveling, how fast, in any given direction, and then making a note, either mentally or on paper, of any deviations from that course. If you do that, you will easily be able to, after several turns and twists and so forth, be able to shoot an azimuth, a straight line, back to your starting point. Whether you're in a city, whether you're out in the woods, whether you're on the water, wherever. And all it really needs is a watch, a piece of paper and a pencil, and even a good quality button compass will do it. So there you go. That's our outdoors portion of the show today. We got a whole bunch of other stuff to hop into, but yeah, the Dead Reckoning is a really neat one. Once you get it down, it's very easy. If you truly learn it, you'll remember it the rest of your life. Very simple. And that we had one other message. I didn't get it. Was a message on Patreon. That's where I shared the story about the orca lady at Jack in the Box and so forth. A lot of good interaction there. So here's an interesting thing. People don't like talking publicly about a lot of things, but I get a lot of private messages on Instagram and TikTok and Patreon and so forth. People like to remain anonymous, and we respect that. I would never give up those names and addresses and so forth. But it's just an interesting thing. A lot of people won't say or comment on a particular, a post or a story or a picture, but they will contact you privately. So anyway, interesting. Feral, excuse me, let me get a sip. Do a lot of talking for various shows and radio and stuff. Your voice just takes a beating. Okay. The message was about ferro rods. So for those of you who don't know, I do make and sell these on my website, but you don't have to buy them from me. You can get cheaper versions off of Amazon, a lot of different places. A ferro rod is short for ferrocerium. And what it boils down to, it's a metallic rod, usually about 3 to 5 inches long, anywhere from 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch in diameter. Okay, so a little bit bigger than a half a pencil. And if you strike it with something sharp, like the spine of a knife or the edge of a knife or a dedicated striker, it throws a bunch of sparks. Now, people are always like, why do you advocate a ferro rod over matches or a lighter? And I got to keep this brief. We're going to run out of time. The answer is simple. If you have your druthers, as we used to say, I'd rather druthers, for those of you that don't get that, if you're too young, I guess I'm getting old now. Of course, use a lighter or matches to start a fire in the backwoods or your backyard or a barbecue or a beach bonfire, whatever you're doing. The reason ferro rod should be a part of your gear, I don't care where you buy them from. A quality ferro rod should be part of your outdoors gear. because unlike matches, unlike a lighter, lighters can freeze, they can get wet and cease to function. You run out of matches. A good 5/16 to 3/8 inch diameter ferro rod will give you thousands of strikes, potentially starting easily hundreds of fires. And it doesn't matter if it gets wet, if it gets frozen, you can wipe it down, defrost it. You know exactly how much life you have left on that rod, because after you strike it each time, it shaves a little bit off. But look up, go to YouTube, go to the internet, go to gearconvoy.com. There's all kinds of info on how to use ferro rods. That's why, because I've had multiple Bic lighters fail on me. I've had some of the quality, I can't think of the name right now, but there are several different quality piezoelectric and these little jet lighters I've had fail on me. Of course, use your lighter and matches as your first line of defense, or your first, whatever, to strike a fire, to light a fire. But the ferro rod should be your ultimate backup, and you should know how to use it. We've gone over that in other shows. We'll do it again, but now we got to move on. So that's the thing on ferro rods. Okay, lab-grown salmon. Do you want to eat sushi that was grown in a bioreactor? Okay, here we go. We go to the New York Post for this story. Lab-grown salmon is now FDA approved. Here's why this one restaurant is putting it on the menu. Okay, San Francisco cellular agriculture company Wild Type is the latest company to get FDA approval for its lab-grown salmon. Only 3 other companies have gotten the stamp of approval to sell cultivated salmon so far. The company made waves in the food and culinary sectors after announcing that its hero product, Saku Salmon, got approved in a thorough pre-market safety consultation. So very briefly, we've covered multiple times the lab-grown or the lab-cultured meat and so chicken nuggets. We had a couple of episodes ago, they were growing chicken nuggets in the lab. This is where they basically take a piece of the cellular tissue of an animal, put it in what's called a bioreactor, add some other bullcrap to it, and no offense to these guys that are doing it, I get where they're coming from. This is an emerging market, a lot of money to be made. I don't disrespect that at all. I don't want to eat it, but other people seem to have no problem, so good for them. And probably not bad for you. I don't know. I find that hard to believe, but that's my personal thoughts. Good for them, though. But now they're able to grow salmon in this bioreactor or whatever it's called in this case. Curious people can find the fish on the menu at Why am I not surprised? Portland, Oregon, a restaurant Cann, and I want to no disrespect the restaurant Kann, Cann. Give them their shout out, a James Beard award-winning Haitian spot by Chef Gregory Gourdet. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. No disrespect at all, sir. For June, the cultured salmon will only grace the menu every Thursday night, but in July, it is slated to be a nightly offering. Our saku is sushi grade and best served raw in dishes like sushi, crudo, and ceviche. They explain on their website. We made it for world-class chefs who seek out the distinct flavor and freshness of raw seafood. That just doesn't do it for me, but okay, we move on. According to the FDA, they view lab-grown salmon as safe as comparable foods produced by other methods. The FDA wrote in its public response. I don't even know what that means. They view it as safe as comparable foods produced by... It's a fish. It's a fish. Do you view... Okay, whatever. I'm not going to argue with the FDA. They do their own thing. The FDA's only gripe with Wild Type's cultivated salmon so far is that the company refers to it as cultured salmon cell material, which is not our recommendation. This is the FDA speaking, not our recommendation of that term as an appropriate common or usual name for declaring the substance in accordance with the FDA's labeling requirements. I don't even know what that means. Whatever. We don't got to go through the process. We've talked about this before. They grow it. They take salmon cells or meat cells and they grow it in a bioreactor. I guess the whole point here with the salmon is to get away from the mercury and the other stuff that's found in wild salmon, which I get in mercury is a problem in the water. I don't know that I want to jump right into eating lab-grown fish, though, to fix that particular problem. That Ugh. The Washington State Department of Health says farmed salmon can sometimes be exposed to organic contaminants and pests like sea lice, more often than wild-caught salmon, but rest assured, most of the salmon available for us to eat is farmed. So, I don't really know how that fits into the story, but they shoehorned it in there. Synthetic salmon hasn't hit the grocery store shelves just yet, but given cultural interest in plant-based, meatless, and lab-grown products, that day seems to be just around the corner. Guys, we've been eating fish, cattle, pork, and chickens for a very long time. Me speaking for myself only, why would we want to change that for something grown in a laboratory? You do you, and if it works out, I'm happy for you. I really am. I don't wish the worst on anybody. I don't think that's for me, though. You want to talk about cooking something at home that's good, though. I got a brief second to shoehorn this in here and wedge it in. During the break, I went out there, and I've mentioned this before. I've got a couple of black stray cats, beautiful little kitties. One's a short hair, one's a floofy. It looks almost like a distant relative of a Maine Coon, these kitties that come on my house. I'm a sucker. I'm a loser. I feed them. I give them whatever they want. They know they've got me bent around their paw, and I do whatever they want. Anyways, if you ever want to feed your kitty cats, if you've got dogs tend to love this too. Give them scrambled eggs. My dog, these cats, pretty much any predatory animal or animal that eats meat, they love scrambled eggs. And I make them, when I make scrambled eggs, look this up on the internet. There's all kinds of ways to do this, but my favorite way is what's called the Michelin star scrambled eggs. You'll see a lot of the famous chefs do this. You do this by cooking the scrambled eggs on high heat for like 30 seconds. You take it off and continue to stir, put it back on high heat. Look it up. There's all kinds of videos. It is delicious. It gives you a very creamy and light, fluffy scrambled egg that is so good. So usually when I make scrambled eggs, I'll add an extra egg or two there for my dog, Bacon. And if the kitty cat's out there, Dark Knight and Mr. Floofers, that's what we call them. If they're both, like I said, black cats, they're pitch black cats. Mr. Floofers is obviously the furrier one with the longer hair. They will eat these scrambled eggs up, though, I mean, faster than when I feed them meat. It's crazy. So there you go. Now you know. If you didn't before, cats, dogs, they love scrambled eggs. My dog loves rice, too. When I make like basmati rice, we go with steak or something else, he will eat rice all day long. But we must move on. We go back to, that's right, Florida, folks. Let's see, where are we at? I got so many papers here. Okay, Florida woman, I'll read the headline and we'll jump right in. A Florida woman fatally stabs partner after machete attack during domestic dispute, police say. This comes to us from ABC Action News out of Lake Wales, Florida. A woman is in the hospital after she was stabbed twice, and she fatally stabbed her partner during a domestic dispute on Thursday. The Lake Wales Police Department, one second. All right. I mentioned before how I hate people who do that. All right, let's stick with it. The Lake Wales Police Department said a man and a woman had been in a long-term relationship for about 10 years. On June 12, just before 5 p.m., that is 1700 hours. For those of you around the world, the suspect struck the victim. I'm not sure who's who in this case because one had a knife, one had a machete, in the face during a domestic confrontation, according to police. The woman, who police said is the victim, went inside her home to call 911, but her phone was dead, so she put it to charge. The woman needed to get to her car to retrieve some belongings, but due to the previous actions of the suspect, which is the man, I believe, she feared for her life, believing the man, who police said is the suspect, there we go, was no longer in the area. She armed herself with a kitchen knife and walked to her vehicle, according to police. Investigators said when the woman got to her car, the suspect approached her and hit her over the head with a machete. Police said the woman then used the knife to defend herself and fatally stabbed the man, causing him to drop the machete. The suspect, it's not over, folks. The suspect then grabbed the knife, he was stabbed with and used to stab the victim, the woman, in the back, leaving the weapon in her back before he collapsed on the ground. Officials said the man was found unresponsive at the apartment complex and pronounced dead. The woman was transported to a local hospital where she is being treated for her injuries. Based on the evidence, no criminal charges have been filed, and they believe the case to be an incident of self-defense. The investigation is ongoing. Well, folks, I guess what they say is true. Like the old saying goes, love hurts. All right, that's going to do it. We are ready to wrap it up. Don't wait to prepare for an emergency until you are in it. If you wait, it may be too late. If you don't make it out alive, you don't make it out at all. Stay safe out there, folks.